Well, okay, friends. So I hope everybody is from English medium. Is there anybody from Hindi medium? If anybody is from Hindi medium, just let me know. Otherwise, I will continue in English. Otherwise, if somebody is from Hindi medium, I'll switch over to being bilingual. Well, okay, friends. We are now discussing Roman history writing, and in that we have discussed two Roman historians so far. We have discussed about Cato, and then we have discussed about Livy, and now third important Roman historian is called Cornelius Tacitus. His period was from 55 to 120 AD, and according to some of the historian, he was the most scientific, and he is the greatest among the Roman historian that Sheikh Ali writes. He is having certain similarity with Thucydides, as Thucydides has tried to critically analyze the information that was reaching to him, and he was trying to go to the root of the information. Similarly, we find that Tacitus is doing it on and off. He was born in the noble family, and he worked on the different important positions, and he was having a very good knowledge about oratory, law, and art. And there was a person called Agricola who was governor and who was one of the important politician in the Roman Empire, and he marries his daughter. Julia Agricola was married to Tacitus, and that has in fact enhanced his prestige, and that has in a way contributed to the growth of his career, and later on he became member of one religious order who used to be in charge of the books, and later on he also becomes governor of Germany. Roman Empire was expanding in all direction. They conquered Britain, they conquered Germany, and as he served as governor in Germany, that information was very helpful for him. That experience was very helpful for him when he wrote book Germania that gives information about Germany. Then he became a consider also. Consider was an important post in the Roman politics. And during his period, there was a Roman emperor called Domitian. And this Domitian was a kind of tyrant who used to, was a kind of very egoistic person, and he expected that Tacitus should praise him. But Tacitus refused to praise him, and Tacitus he wrote the book after the death of Domitian, and about the work of Tacitus. He is a copious writer who wrote on lot many themes. Number of works he have, and was considered as one of the important historian of the Roman period. And the glorious past of Roman past, he considered it as a golden period. In AD 93, he started writing. He wrote on a different topic, and he was doing an independent research work, collected a lot of information, and he was a very good orator also. The way you speak very effectively, that oratory skill he has used while writing history. Uh, and the important book that is written by him is Life of Agricola, Germania, Dialogue on Orator, Histories and Annals. Life of Agricola, it is a biographical sketch of his father-in-law, Agricola. As I already told you, Agricola was one of the important politician. And when Britain, it was called Britain, when Britain was conquered by Roman Empire, Agricola was appointed as governor there. And in this book, Life of Agricola, we get a lot of information about the geography of Great Britain. And Tacitus, he writes that the people of Great Britain are fighting against Roman occupation, and they are fighting to preserve their independence. So he praises in a way, though Roman, they have conquered Great Britain, the Tacitus was broad-minded enough to praise who were his political opponent. And he also writes that as Agricola, he has taken a lot of important steps in just a minute. As Agricola has taken some important steps in improving the administration in Britain, so he was becoming very popular, and this Roman Emperor Domitian, he got jealous of Agricola and was in murder. So he writes that under the bad ruler also there could be some very good general and very good commander. Then his book Germania, he was governor, and that information, that experience that he gathered while administrating German area was very helpful to him. and he compares German character with the Roman character. And he says that the Romans, because as they are now have a very extensive area under their control, they are slowly becoming addicted to luxury. And in contrast, German people are very hardworking, very disciplined. So he praises German character here also. But he was a Roman basically and wanted to preserve the Roman Empire. So he says that it is very important that we should keep the German tribes divided. Otherwise, if they are united together, probably they will throw off the Roman hegemony. Mm, and that will become threat to the unity of German people will become threat to the Roman Empire. In his book, next book, that is Dialogue on Orator, it is having a lot of philosophical debate, and it is an exemplary oratory skill. How you impressively you put your ideas forward, that exemplifies that is given in this book. Then there are two more work, histories and annals. So history is having more than 14 volume. Lot of it is already lost. So it tells about Roman emperors' history from AD 68 to 96. Only fourth and fifth book survive. That was completed in 109, and it talks about civil war. We have already mentioned about civil war, that the war between the supporter of the senator and the supporter of the emperor. So here also we see his book also is quite a good example of oratory skill. And like Thucydides, he is a critical historian who tries to identify the sources of his information. He was a very good psychoanalyst also. He has done a lot of good psychoanalysis of the character. And he had a very keen, important, penetrating mind, and does not hesitate in passing a critical remark. His writing is very fast paced and concise. Annals is having this another book, Annals, that is 16 book, and nearly one third of the books are lost. And this is completed. Annals is completed in 115 AD, and it discusses the history of Rome from the death of Augustus 14 to the death of Nero. These are the two important emperors. And it's big, he writes how these emperor were addicted to luxury and unethical life, and in a way they have contributed to the decline of the Roman virtues and ultimately to the decline of the Roman Empire. And the main theme is here also the conflict between senators and the emperor. So the if we want to evaluate his work, we can understand that Tacitus, he had a capacity to capture the psychology of the historical character. Very carefully he collects information and makes analysis. He gives a lot of importance to the individual struggle in history. Minute details of human mind he portrays in his writing, and that is in his writing, his sharp bent of mind, analytical skill. And next thing is that he have a desire to speak the truth. He doesn't spare the emperor also, he points out their mistakes. He is quite frank and blunt, and he discusses many intricate issues with depth. He He inquires into the conception, motives, and mental makeup of major heroes, and he believed that history should strengthen the virtues of man. By reading history, our virtues get strengthened. But at many places, the critical and scientific elements it research into the background, and the literary and philosophical effects take precedence. He gives more importance to literary and philosophical reflection. But nevertheless, in imagination, in philosophical debate, his works are quite exemplary. Psychological insight, this is already covered. Defects, he points out defects of the Roman society, how these people are now becoming addicted to luxury. He is having a very very grand pompous language. Well, his history writing is having utilitarian purpose. He says that you should be history teaches a lesson, and then he makes a very important statement. For example, he says, more corrupt the kingdom, the more laws we will have. If there are a lot of laws, that means it's already a very corrupt society. That is the reason we need so many laws. There are certain lacunas, certain shortcoming in his writing, like shifting of material. He seems to have become very lazy sometimes, and in comparison to the making statement about the truth, he gives more importance to the literary effect. This is Tacitus was one of the important Roman historian, and after that we will be discussing about the next Roman historian, that is Julius Caesar, and few more, and then lastly we will sum it up once again. Well, okay. So Julius Caesar, he was a very famous. He was a famous politician, famous general, famous emperor, very experienced general, great politician and administrator, writer. So he was a versatile genius. And there are two of his famous books. One is Commentaries on the Gallic War and one is Commentaries on the Civil War. In case of Gallic War, Gallic is an area which is known as France today by and large. And when the Roman, they conquered that Gallic area, that is present day France, he gives his experience. He talks about France and how, what are the wars that was fought. Similarly, Civil War, he writes three volume, but last volume is not completed. That is later on completed by somebody else. And here he gives, he was a person who was involved in the Civil War. He wanted to become emperor. Some people supported him, some people opposed him, and senator and the emperor, supporter of the senator and the supporter of the emperor, they fought the Civil War. And generally speaking, in his, he is having a attitude towards self-praise. Like he says, during the Gallic War, what are the area I have conquered that has enriched the Roman people, that has enriched my follower. And in case of Civil War also, he writes the similar thing. The people who supported him, they have enriched, they are benefited by his actions. Now, apart from Julius Caesar, there were some more historian. See, these three, four are more important. We have started with Cato, Livy, Tacitus, and then Julius Caesar. So these four are more important. Then, apart from these four important Roman historian, there is a person called Appian, and he wrote Roman history in 20 volumes. And from beginning, from the establishment of the Roman Republic to second century, he writes. Then there was a person called Paleo Orion, and he makes an analysis of Alexander's expedition, and he described the background of Alexander's expedition. And the last days of Alexander that is described by him is quite pathetic. Alexander has died a very pathetic death. It is believed that one of his wife, who was jealous of his another wife, had poisoned him to death. Well, the Roman historian, they also have a tradition to write biographies, and there was a person called Nicholas Damascus who wrote the life of Julius Augustus Caesar, and there was a person called Cornelius Nepo who writes about the lives of a great captain. So this is about the important Roman historian, and now we will discuss about the salient features. Well, so in Well, if we have to just take an overview of the Roman history writing, generally we find that most of the people who wrote history, that is categorized as the Roman historiography, they were mostly involved in the politics and war. So they had a first-hand experience of getting involved in those actions about which they are writing. Then next thing is that they were most generally inspired by the Roman pride, Roman virtues. They believed that the Roman character is an exemplary character, and they believed that the Roman Empire was a golden period. So they were quite inspired by their own nationalistic ideologies. uh, they had excessive written material available as Roman Empire was expanding. In fact, Roman historiography, if you remember, it started with the written sources, annals, the records. Remember, this annal historiography is another historiography. We will be talking about it later on in the next unit. But the annals is nothing but a record. The literary meaning of annal is a record. So they already had a record, and then as the Roman Empire started expanding all direction, they are having a lot of resources to the correspondence. So they made use of these extensive written resources available to them for writing history. They generally believed that history is having an educative value. Initially they wrote in Greek and later on they wrote in Latin. In the Roman history, the language is very interesting, but when you compare it with the Greek historian, it seems that the Greek historian is having more intellectual basis, more intellectually stimulating. There are certain similarities, like, Greek and Roman historian, they both wrote on the human actions, and not on God. They were more interested in the actions of the man. Um, there should be purpose behind the history writing. That was a general trend. But they had a differences. Like I said, Roman historian is more inclined towards giving more importance to the literary effect, but the Greek historian had given more importance to the intellectual bias. Greek historian like Herodotus, they have traveled to the place where the history has taken place, and we find that in contrast, Roman historian, instead of traveling, they mostly relied on the written sources that were available to them. Though both of them have given a lot of importance to the political life, Greek historians have still dedicated significant space to the social, economical, and cultural life. And in contrast, we find Romans are more inclined towards giving more importance to the political actions. There is a hardly there is a very less about social and economic life. Roman history is more descriptive. The Greek were having a more scientific bent of mind. Uh, The Greek had a depth of thought. Roman history is mostly imitative. And in Roman history, the truth is sacrificed for literary effect. So, in comparison, though the Roman history is more voluminous, it is having they have produced large number of written books, but in comparison to the Greek stands more superior in quality. So, this is where we end our discussion on the Roman historiography. If you are having any doubt, you can ask me.